A brand new version of the Chieftain is here in World of Tanks, and of course today we are looking at the predecessor to the actual Chieftain at the tech tree of the British line. And of course this is the brand new premium tank, the Chieftain prototype, and it is essentially a tier 9 Chieftain that has a few issues. However, we're going to get into some gameplay. We've got a really good gameplay, well, in fact 2 of them actually, and we're going to see how this tank plays, how you should actually play with it, and also we'll have a look at the stats real quickly as well, so you guys get an understanding of what sort of things to look for when playing this tank, and also how you can take it out, because this thing is, yeah, you definitely want to be removing this thing and not letting it sit there. But first things first, loadout. What have we gone with? Well, considering that the tank is based upon a heavy tank and being a brawling heavy tank that can get up close and personal, as well as be able to snipe using the good accuracy that it does have, 0.28 here, which is fantastic for a heavy tank, and of course follows in the trend of the British heavies. But given the fact that we do have good accuracy, there's no point in taking gun stabilizers in my opinion, because we have such good accuracy. We're at close range where accuracy isn't such a massive problem, because of course you don't have that massive dispersion over a long distance, which makes this a little bit easier. But what we have gone with though is of course advanced loader to boost up the DPM of the tank so that we have a decent level, and that means that in doing so we've essentially gone for that build in which we're able to get the damage per minute up. 2,744 is what we've managed to get it to, and of course that's with a 9 skill crew. Of course if you haven't got a 9 skill crew that has rapid loading, then of course that's going to be down by about 10%, and so yeah, I mean it's not a massive difference, but it definitely makes a difference. We've also got Born Leader as well, which increases your reload speed as well. But more importantly, we've actually put on the speed boost equipment because we want to be able to get up to top speed in the Chieftain prototype, because essentially when you are in this tank it does feel a little bit sluggish, and although it has an okay power to weight ratio, if we can then boost up the top forward speed, we're going to be able to at least get up to that top speed using that power to weight ratio, and the 55 kilometers an hour means that it can keep up with some of the mediums. It isn't as good and as accelerating as some of those medium tanks, but it's still really nice to play. We also have view range, because this tank, if you can get view range on it, will make it much better, because you don't want to be getting out spotted in this thing. This tank leads on to the next point, which is the armor. It doesn't get a whole lot of armor. It's definitely not your typical Chieftain, even though it might look like it is. And although it has the relatively weird shaped hull armor, it is very weak, and by very weak I mean it has a lower plate only 18mm thick, which is very well angled to a degree, but of course 80mm angled, probably looking at about 120mm, which is, yeah, I mean basically pennable by everything. And even the upper plate, most tanks are going to be looking somewhat down onto it, and that makes the armor angling not as good, and that means that you're going to have to essentially have probably like, I don't know, 200 pen to pen this thing from the when looking down onto that upper plate, which at the end of the day at tier 9 and when you're facing tier 10s, it's basically never a problem when facing this thing to pen it through the hull armor. So it's a typical British tank, and of course American as well, similar sort of style in which, you know, you're shooting down into it, it's very easy to pen, lower plate's huge, easy to pen. Side armor, once again, is a bit weird. It does have the side skirt on the side armor, which makes it slightly better, but it doesn't have that good of a side armor. The side skirt stops you from being heat spammed, which is nice, but at the same time it is not particularly amazing. It's a very thin piece of metal anyway, only 6mm thick, but it will absorb those kind of HESH rounds or any of the heat rounds that are coming in, which is nice, as well as the fact that they'll have to go through the tracks as well. But the armor itself is very bad behind it, and so you basically be getting penned by everything. So yeah, not particularly great. 60mm of armor on the side. So what do you actually have to do with this? Well, you have to get hold down like all of the other Chieftains. And if you can do that, then this tank can work. It can bounce a few rounds off of the turret. But considering that this is the prototype of the tank, the armor kind of angling on that turret is not as good, and you can get penned through the turret, which kind of sucks. And I mean, yeah, it does suck because you've got loads of different plates here that you can see that Wargaming have added in, but they all basically equate to about 270mm, which means that if you're coming up against TDs at this tier with higher tier tanks as well, higher tier tanks with good premium ammunition, they can go straight through the turret, which sucks because it's supposed to get hulled down. The cupola on the tank is obviously quite prominent. It's bigger than some of the other chieftains in the game, which means you can be penned, and the side of the turret is almost like a Carnarvon or a Centurion side of a turret, and yeah, that can be penned really easily. So as soon as you start moving your turret away from looking directly at an opponent, they can get penned quite easily. And also the left hand side has significantly weaker armor, looking at about 170mm, which when you're considering the angling of it, probably looking at about 240, 250, 260 pen to be able to go through it, or you might pull off a lucky bounce. And also the side of the mantler can be penned, but it is once again a little bit of a pain to, I guess, hit. But if someone's looking at the side of the turret and they try and hit your turret, they can pen you through the side of the mantler, or kind of where the engine, where the gun bay is. So yeah, a little bit of a disappointment there, but armor out the way, I mean, at the end of the day, the gun is going to make up for the lack of armor, or at least, you know, not as overpowered armor as you might want within the game. But we're running it with full premium consumables. Obviously, as always, I always say first premium consumable you should be using, if you're not using any, is food. I would always recommend it on every single tank. Scrap the fire extinguisher, except from in very rare occasions. I never use a fire extinguisher ever. It's literally just not worth it for the amount of boost that your enhanced rations is going to give you. So always use enhanced rations if you have the cash. Of course, if you don't have the silver, then don't use it. But if you do have a little bit and you want to get your first premium consumable in all your tanks, it should always be enhanced rations first. Then I'd always go enhanced repair kit, and then as the last premium consumable to put in the tank would be an enhanced med kit. So yeah, ideally, for the most part, you could probably just use a standard medkit. There's not that many opportunities where it's worth spending the extra, you know, 18 or 8,000 silver every game getting the premium medkit. But I do it anyway. We're min-maxing the tank. We want to show off what it can do. Premium rounds, I've gone half and half basically with premium and standard rounds. Standard rounds on this tank are fantastic. 262 pen, so very, very good. And the premium rounds, similarly, very, very good. 310 pen, which is really, really nice. And then the Hesh rounds are the HE, so it's always worth taking some of these. 515 damage if you pen, 120 pen as well, so it's got very, very good Hesh pen. And of course, when you're coming up against light tanks, mediums, this is going to be an amazing way to boost up your damage with this tank. So I was very, very happy to see this tank in the game. I was looking forward to it. I'm not necessarily expecting it to be amazing, but let's have a look at some of the replays, see how I actually fared in it, and of course it suits somewhat of my playstyle. Let's jump into that now. So the first replay that we do have today is on Vineyards, and Vineyards being a map that is pretty decent, and you're able to you know, work this tank quite well. You can use gun depression when needed, and you also have the ability to deal quite a lot of damage. You have the ability to get a little bit of spotting if you do manage to find positions where you can get a little bit of spotting, like up here at the beginning. You can find easy kind of side shots on people that push up to the hill just over to the right there, and of course you can also get that spotting damage on people that do cross, exactly like this 57 Heavy, who we managed to land one shell. Reload speed of this tank, you're looking at about 8 seconds, so it's more than enough to get multiple shots in here. And of course, when I'm playing in this tank, I'm always going for the tracking damage if possible. Now, if it is possible, it's always the best, because you're guaranteeing yourself at least a chance to be able to get actual damage and also assistance at the same time, which is what we want Now, unfortunately for me, didn't realise that there was a little bank there. There is one, so yeah, at least we know that now for future reference. But now we find ourselves up against the Jaeger who got spotted out in the open, and he's been absolutely pumped. So straight off the bat, you're seeing that the tank can kick out quite a bit of damage quite quickly, and we picked up nearly 2,000 already, which is nice. But of course, in typical fashion, as soon as you get spotted, you want to be pulling as far back as possible. And luckily, we only take one shot of damage there, which is fine. It's not going to be a problem for us. But of course, I want to keep myself in the game, always keeping myself at least open to getting some damage. Unfortunately, we get double tracked here, and we're kind of lucky not to take another one there. That was a bit of a risky play by me. I was hoping to just pop up, at least spot someone, and then maybe get a shot and pull instantly back down. I wasn't expecting to actually stay up there any time, but we do get tracked, and then of course, yeah, not particularly ideal. But at the same time, we now can move over here. Now I'm a little bit cautious over to the right, as you see me flick over there, see if there is anything over there. But at this point, I'm just trying to find any shots that we can on any of the tanks that get spotted over on their spawn, whilst also kind of pushing up and seeing if we can find a shot on someone like this. Now, of course, we bounce off of the very lightly armoured French medium tank, which is basically the same as a light tank in terms of its armour model. But straight ahead then, we managed to pen through the front, one of the most annoying tanks to pen through the front, the Object 257. Yes, brilliant. It's nice to see us bouncing off the right tanks here. But either way, picking up 2,300 damage so far means that we are able to at least deal damage in this tank. And given the fact that this was one of the first tanks I'd played in a while, then yeah, it was kind of nice to jump back in and find myself in a tank that was somewhat familiar in the way that it plays, since I'm a really big fan of the British mediums and of course heavies, because they provide you with both mobility and also accuracy that allow you to have really nice games if you do keep yourself in the right sort of positions. Now, in this game, we could have tried to go and fight the heavies on the hill over to the right, but luckily we didn't, because actually there's a ton of tanks on the enemy team out in the open. Once again, going there for the tracking shot on the Jaeger, see if we can lock him down and get some assistance. Unfortunately, no one on our team is willing to try and actually hit anyone, but it doesn't matter. We are in a bit of a pickle here though, because we've got tanks in front, we've got tanks that could be over to the left, but we also have tanks that could just rock up and try and YOLO us, which of course in World of Tanks is a common occurrence, so we want to be a little bit careful. But we've removed one of the big boys out of the game, the ones that could basically finish us off in one shot, so it's nice to get them out of the game. And having seen the matchup and that we are currently losing in terms of tank numbers, we want to make sure that we're not making any silly plays. But given the fact that we know where pretty much all of the enemy tanks are at this point, there's a few over in their spawn, and the rock will provide some comfort. There's no artillery that can dump a shot on us, or land a shot on us, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, we're pretty safe here, and that allows us to play this ridge and play this area here, which is very good. You can use it in your own positions, this sort of game. It's essentially when you start losing on this side of the map, where the two enemy heavy tanks are spotted, you can essentially pull over here. It is of course a last effort. You should not really aim to be in this spot. You want to take the right hand side, and effectively you'd want to actually push from this hill over to the top of the map, and then make your way across up to that hill area, where then you can get side shots on the enemy team in their base, and that's ultimately how you can push on this side. But unfortunately the enemy team were just pushing very heavily on this side, which is, yeah, not ideal, but at the same time it's allowed us to farm up quite a bit as they've pushed through. Now I'm a little bit scared of the Teeth Breaker. Of course it is a little pea shooter, but at the same time little peas can soon add up to a bag, and we don't want to be farmed in the backside, especially with the armor that this tank has, where the Teeth Breaker is definitely able to actually pen us. So we find ourselves a wild sharpshooter who quickly shut down for the second enemy of the game, taken out by the Chieftain prototype. But at this point, it's still not a decisive win. There's still a few tanks on a decent amount of hit points that we don't want to kind of throw away our hit points at this point. You know, it could go either way still at this point, and especially with our team sitting quite far back. I have no idea, right, why TDs and the heavy tank at the back of the map in J like 8 and H8 are still there. Like, it genuinely amazes me how much people would camp because they think it's going to improve their game, or that they're too worried about pushing, when in reality all you're doing is you're letting your teammates get farmed, you're not helping them out, and then they're all going to come after you at the end of the game and you're going to get one shot of damage at the end, which is something that for some reason more of the inexperienced players and players that have just not understood what they should be doing in the game typically do. Now, I'm not raging, it's just a literal thing that I see so many people doing it, and it is just something that you should just not do if you want to have better games, if you want to be more competitive, if you want to be able to carry games. Being so far back, it's not going to be able to carry games like that, and you're definitely not going to get any better. Of course, in this sort of scenario, you just want to make sure that you're at least able to hit the people, because I'm sure they wouldn't even have been able to hit anyone back there. But either way, you know, we're not going to dwell on that, but it was just something I wanted to highlight, as we always do in these gameplays. It's just a few things and a few hints that can help you guys out. So hopefully that didn't come across as you should always be doing this, because there are times when it is good to be up there, but it's usually when you've lost so bad that you have to retreat up there at the end of the game, not be there for the entire game. But Jagdpanzer 100 here, easy shots in the side. Love to see us bouncing off the side of him. Must have hit the back of the track or something like that, where we don't able to actually get any damage, but we do manage to plop one straight into the side of him, and it's just been farm fest in this game. You're seeing the accuracy be so good. Even if we bounced a few, it's not the end of the world, because we pretty much hit them all. We've just ended up bouncing, or, you know, getting a little bit unlucky with where the round actually hit. You can see here, just plopping rounds into all of the tanks that get spotted, and there's nothing better. People will say, well, maybe you could have moved up or something, but at the end of the day, when it isn't broken, you don't need to do anything stupid. And of course, YOLOing in to get more damage and being taken out means that you're not going to do any more damage. And this is something that is the fine line in World of Tanks, where you're too far back or you're too far forward, and it's finding that in-between balance where you know when to push and when to not to. And that is really where the difference between experienced players and non-experienced players will be able to rack up, you know, double the damage on average as other people, or not. And in this game we pick up 7,263 damage, and in a tank where we only got 1,800 base experience, I was expecting maybe a little bit more, but that shows you that this tank is played very well right now. 1,800 base XP was not even a mastery badge in this thing, with 7,263 damage in a tier 10 game as well. So yeah, just keep an eye out for this tank. I think it's definitely one that people are playing very well, and it is a very, very fluid, nice tank to play. So let's jump into the next replay and see what else is in store. Now, it's safe to say that not all games go like the previous one, and you can't just sit there farming damage for the entire game and, you know, moving about a little bit, just knowing when to not YOLO in, basically. This one, it doesn't necessarily go all to plan, and we're going to see how this tank fares in one of those matchups where it just doesn't go particularly well for the team, but how you can still make a little bit of an impact and hopefully help your team to win those games and win more games in general. And of course, do more damage yourself, earn more XP, get more silver, whatever you're after. Yeah, hopefully this is going to showcase a little bit more of what the Chieftain prototype can do. Now, am I going to... I think we got to talk about the actual tank itself. Having played this tank a little bit, having played the Chieftains and all of the similar sort of tanks, I have played a lot of British tanks in the game, similar to this sort of playstyle. This one, it is a decent one. I'm not going to say it's overpowered. I'm not going to say it's underpowered. I think they found a nice little balance where the tank is good, but it's not too good. It's not bad, but it isn't, you know, amazing. So I think they found this one to be actually pretty well balanced. It's got the nice APCR rounds. It's got nice kind of heat rounds. It's got HESH rounds. It has flexibility in that you can move around the map quite nicely. You've got, you know, just versatility. You've got good gun depression. You've got a decent turret for the tier, and given the fact that it's a heavy, you know, most heavies don't really have that good armor anyway. You know, hull armor does suck. You do get penned a lot in this tank when you do expose yourself. But at the same time, you know, that's similar with most heavies. I think there's very few heavies in the game that really can do a whole lot. But you can see here, we find a Object 257 out in the open who we will gladly take a few shots from, and that's really nice to see. But we do have a few players who are pushing up. We've got the T57 heavy on the enemy team. It might even be a T58 heavy. Not entirely sure, we'll have to have a look in a minute. But essentially what I'm doing here is pushing over to this left side. We know that there's a 277 who we plow one straight into the underside of, or at least the lower plate angled upwards, so easy pen there. And then of course just trying to get that final shot. He does manage to pen us. I wasn't sure where he'd managed to pen us, but maybe it was straight through the turret. I wasn't entirely sure. Maybe you got a glimpse of the hull armor, which of course is an easy pen. But we're just trying to see when he shoots to maybe poke over and get another shot of damage in here. I kind of fluffed the shot here. I probably should have just waited a little second later. Turns out it was a 58 heavy, not the 57 heavy, but we need to make sure that we're trading with this guy. He has a big intricate reload, but of course has a huge gun, so we want to make sure that our team aren't taking a ton of damage without him getting punished. But of course you see me here just pushing up, being aggressive towards him. He's obviously focused so hard on the T30, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, it was a bit of a struggle to try and get some shots into this guy. He's now looking like he's reloaded. We try and get that shell into him, but unfortunately it didn't happen. But now we've got the problem with this position right here, is that enemy tanks can push up to the hill area where that T54 is. So you can get shot in the side, and of course you can get shot straight ahead from people in the middle as well. So you've just got to be a little bit careful when looking either side, but you can crest this ridge if you think that you're a little bit safe. And you can see we get a free shot into the Object 705, which is nice. Still that T54 though, he's obviously looking over this way. He wants to get a little bit more damage like he got earlier, but we plow one straight through the turret of it. We're using those premium rounds to good effect. I want to try and carry this game. Even if we are down by a ton of tanks, it's still possible. And so if we can get that, reduce chances of bouncing. T54 doesn't have a terrible turret. 260 pen, I mean, it might be able to pen it, but at the same time we want to guarantee it, or at least give ourselves as big of a chance as possible. But having got 2,800 damage, and the game is slowly becoming a landslide defeat here. I mean, the enemy teams are just basically rinsing through our team here. So we've got to be a little bit careful, got to make sure that we're not doing anything stupid. And we find ourselves a 705 who I'm trying to go for. We try and go for the cupola on the speculative effort there. Doesn't actually land, but yeah, now at this point I'm deciding I don't really want to be over here on my own, so I'm going to push over to this side. Maybe we can get a shell again onto the T54. Seems like we were punishing and ruining his day there. I apologise if that was you in the T54, but you know, needs must and everything. We do manage to get a little bit more, but you know, at this point it's just a case of finding out where the enemy team are and trying to remove as many of their hit points as we physically can. Now the 60 TP is up on the ridge. We managed to find a T58 heavy who manages to connect one to the side of the turret. But this is where we're going to see the Chieftain prototype in the kind of best position it can be. Now what I do here, I don't want to say it's a clever play, but you know, the T58 thinks that I'm still going to be up here. We then take a really big wide swing around so that he's probably still going to be pre-aiming the other way. He's of course a one shot, and then we get a free shell into the side of him. Just an easy thing that you can do in your own games. Just try and surprise people, put them in a position where it's not going to make it easy and stuff like that. But at this point, we've done 4,000 damage. Oh crap, the 705A thinks that he can just auto-aim us. I try and go for the tracks there on the move. He's now going to ram me, but I'm fairly heavy and we actually avoid him. And now we get a shot into the side of him. He then somehow detracts us by literally rolling sideways against us. You know, typical World of Tanks things. But because we have really good pen, we can actually look down onto the upper plate of the 705. We are sideways. This guy is not aiming properly, and we're able to just keep ploughing rounds into him. Now I'm putting my gun in his and trying to make it difficult. We put one more into him, lowering down to 200 hit points. But yes, he does manage to finally pen us. and of course we don't manage to get any more damage, but we removed a ton of hit points off of him, and you can see there the brawling capacity of this tank. It's pretty decent. I mean, it can definitely hold its own a little bit up against some of those heavier tanks and stuff like that. You just got to play it a little bit better. Of course, having some of those premium rounds definitely helps to go through those heavy tanks. But generally a pretty decent game, and of course the IS-7 on the opposite side to where you typically should be in an IS-7. But, you know, I guess it's Soviet things. The Mao is obviously oblivious to the fact that there are loads of tanks about to pull up on his backside. But yeah, unfortunately, we do end up losing this game. There's no surprise, the Mao's got 8,000 blocked. I mean, very good block game, but only 1,000 actual damage. So yeah, I guess he was just a bullet sponge at this point, or tank round sponge, whatever you want to call it. But he's all out of luck here, and the 60 TP is about to shut him down on the move. Of course, I don't know why people always fire on the move at these sorts of clutch scenarios when you should just actually aim and therefore take him out. There's no way the mouse is going to take out that 60 TP. But there we go, 5,584 damage with a third class badge, and of course managing to deal the most damage in the game, but unfortunately the team not coming in too hot, and of course I wasn't able to carry hard enough, so I guess it's on me. But either way, hopefully you guys did enjoy this video on the Chieftain prototype. Do I think it's worth it? Should you pay for this tank in the game? It's a hard one. It's not too expensive, but at the same time, it is relatively expensive. So yeah, I don't think I would be rushing out if you're not a fan of heavy tanks, and certainly if you don't like the Conqueror, if you don't like the Super Conqueror, if you're not a fan of the Chieftain itself, then this tank is probably not for you, as it is slightly worse in my opinion. But it is a very solid tank at tier 9 that I think can be very, very fun to play, and it's a little bit something different. And yeah, I really enjoyed playing the tank, and I think that's as much as I can say. I think it's down to you at the end of the day. Spend your money where you want to spend your money. But yeah, I don't think it would be a bad thing to purchase this if you were going to spend the same amount on any tank in the game. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you did enjoy, and of course subscribe and like the video to help me out. And yeah, thank you, and I'll see you hopefully in the next one. Have a great day.